Everdark, Chapter 76, Destroyed. Last on Everdark, Julian finds out what's bothering Damon. Like with Balthazar, the vampire king was terrified that Julian would wish to become human and leave him. Julian assures him that while he liked his life before, he loves it now, and Damon too. When the throne came crashing down, splintering on impact, not 20 feet from him, Balthazar and Caemorn, Christian nearly jumped out of his skin. They had just left the spire and seer. Christian hadn't been keen on watching the starving immortal eat. Only Sophia had stayed. He had felt a rush of gratitude from Seer that they would go. She didn't want them to see her lose control. He could well imagine her pale, papery skin slathered with blood and organs. He did not need to see it in reality. Balthazar had promised to come get Seer when she felt ready to leave the dungeon. As soon as you are recovered enough to come out, we'll take you to King Damon.
I would like that, but not until I am a little restored.
She had touched her face. It was such a human reaction to want to look beautiful before one saw an old friend that Christian had felt a connection to her. He winced, though, at those empty eye sockets. Was there enough blood in the world to restore her eyes? Of course, only when you are ready. Balthazar had responded gallantly, not wincing once at Seer's wrecked appearance. And then they had left her and Sophia. They'd met the group of 5 former vampires, now humans, tromping down the hallway with the zombie-like stare of the mind control in the hallway of the spire.
Did you?
Christian began as he twisted out of the zombies' way. No, I am not controlling them. Damon is. He chose those that wouldn't be loyal to him no matter what. We won't be seeing them again. Come, let's get outside. It is much too close in here. Balthazar put a hand on Christian's lower back and guided him out of the spire. It was just after they had left the building that the throne had come down, like a rocket in reverse. A small circle of people went around the throne and then looked up at the top of the spire from where it had been hurled. Balthazar gazed up as well and let out a delighted laugh. "Oh, Kmon! It looks like our king has started spring cleaning, and he has started with your throne." Caemorn was staring down at the destroyed throne, which to Christian looked incredibly gaudy, with an almost comic look of dismay. That just fueled Balthazar's amusement. His master swung an arm around the Cully vampire's shoulders. Caemorn's head lifted, and the expression on his face was a sight to see. He looked a mixture of horrified and disgusted, yet he didn't shove Balthazar away, because Balthazar was Eiros, and Eiros was Damon's best friend. Did you think he'd let you keep it, dear Caemorn? That he'd let you retain a throne? Come now, there is only one king, and you are not him, Balthazar said, seemingly enjoying Caemorn's discomfort greatly. He actually tugged Caemorn closer in a companionable hug. Caemorn looked like he wanted to vomit right into Balthazar's mouth.
That throne is not mine. It is the throne that all preceptors have had since the Order began.
Caemorn reminded him stiffly.
It is a piece of history.
Preceptors don't need thrones,
Arceus remarked. He had wandered over clearly to see what had happened. He chuckled at the sight of the throne.
That is exactly what that tacky piece of furniture needed, to be destroyed.
You still consider yourself a part of the Order, and yet you express glee over the throne's destruction.
Caemorn's eyes narrowed at Arceus.
I suppose that might be considered hypocritical in some people's view.
Arceus mused.
But my faith has never rested on anyone or anything but Damon. Not the institution of the Order, let alone who leads it. And, to be quite honest, I have not liked anyone who sat there.
He pointed at the throne.
Damon looks to you to lead his flock now, Arceus. You shouldn't want to denigrate your position of power in the Order.
Caemorn continued stiffly.
If Damon is to indeed formally honour me with such a position, I shall not need a throne to dictate from. I shall be amongst the flock, for I would see my position as one to show others the purity of my faith and, hopefully, to lead by example. So, no thrones, no fancy robes or anything that would elevate me above others.
Arceus was smiling, not offended at all. He looked like he actually relished the idea of going out into the world clad in sackcloth and ashes. See, Caemorn? Not everyone uses faith as a way to get ahead. Balthazar chuckled. Caemorn slid out from Balthazar's too companionable arm.
Not everyone thinks that leadership can work from the ground up, either.
You almost make me feel religious, Arceus, with the purity of your commitment, Balthazar said. But I have to admit, I'm with Caemorn. Unless I get better seats or something, I just don't see the point in religion.
But you are Eiros, one of the immortals. You will be the equivalent of not quite a saint or an archangel, but somewhere up there.
Arceus told him.
More like the devil.
Christian teased. His master came right to him then, clearly wanting a kiss. Christian gave him a narrow-eyed look. He was still uncomfortable with public displays of affection, while Balthazar was a total exhibitionist. Christian decided to take matters into his own hands and give him a soft kiss on the lips before pulling back. Balthazar looked a little dreamy and framed Christian's waist with his hands. He wasn't satisfied with that peck. I am totally devilish, Balthazar whispered in his ear. Kmon watched their interaction with lizard-like attention. The Kali vampire was handsome, but there was something so inhuman about him that it caused Christian to almost retreat. But he stood his ground. He found himself reaching into his pocket and touching the stone that housed David. He had conquered one man that had far more power over him than Caemorn ever would. The huge diamond sent a pulse of electricity into his fingers. Christian frowned. Was it David trying to get out? Was he draining David of some of his energy? The stone buzzed lightly again as he moved it around in his pocket. He realized that it buzzed more if he had it pointed in a certain direction. He was about to say something to Balthazar when his master and Caemorn started sparring again. What other furniture do you suppose the king will send flying down? Balthazar grinned. Maybe it will be the contents of your wardrobe. Christian took a step away from the battling pair in the direction where the buzz was strongest. Balthazar glanced towards him questioningly, but then Caemorn was replying to his statement.
You are just bitter because there is nothing of yours in the Everdark to throw away.
Caemorn snapped. Actually, I think I have a whole city. I'll be taking that back next, Balthazar said with a scowl.
You mean that the king will be? You cannot do it without his help.
Caemorn smirked. You have no idea of my powers, Caemorn. I'll have you know. Christian lost track of the conversation as he followed the buzzing deeper into the formal garden that surrounded the spire. There were hedges cut into queer shapes that cast long shadows from the double moons. He saw large purple flowers that bobbed with the slight breeze. They let out a perfume that made him feel sleepy. He kept a wide berth from them as he continued to follow the buzzing. It led him to the edge of the hedge garden. There was a path through the bushes that led down a few steps into a wilder area. The forest was beyond. Something was standing in the path between the bushes, waiting for him. Christian's breath froze in his throat. The diamond was buzzing wildly now. There was a spirit floating between the hedges. He clamped his hand down on the diamond, and it ceased its movement.
This must be a trick,
Christian whispered. The spirit, a beautiful woman with Julian's dark hair, shook her head mournfully.
No, it is me, Christian.
What are you doing here, Mrs. Harrow?
Christian asked. The spirit before him was Julian's mother. Even though it had been well over a decade since he'd seen her, and she was now a soft, almost blurry blue that he could see through, he still recognized her. He immediately thought to contact Balthazar so that he could get Julian, but it felt like his connection to his master was cut off by a piece of bulletproof glass. He knew that if he could find the edges of that glass, he'd be able to reach Balthazar, but it would take time. Did he have that time? His gaze fixed on her. She was not approaching him, and he felt no ill intent from her, yet it could only be some evil reason that she was there.
I am compelled to be here.
She finally answered. Her voice sounded wrenched from a body she no longer possessed.
I don't understand, but that doesn't matter.
Christian quickly shook his head. Now was no time for him to seek understanding. Now was the time to get Julian and others to help.
There are people here who can help you.
But she was the one to shake her head that time.
You cannot help me, Christian. None of you can.
Yes, we can. There are people here who understand spirits and the dead better than...
I am in the hands of the one who is most intimate with that knowledge.
She told him. His breath froze in his chest again like it had when he'd first seen her.
The audiobooks for Everdark and Dragon's Reign are not on Audible. If you've been looking for them and not finding them there, you're not nuts. They aren't on there. You can only buy them from our own shop. This is for several reasons, but one of the most important is that we can give you an updated file, just like a video game. For example, the studio had a special guest actor for Seer re-record lines all the way back in episode 7, because the actor was added after the episode was already recorded. No problem. They recut the chapter and we uploaded a new version in the shop. If we go through Amazon and Audible, we have no way of telling you, yes, you directly, that there's been a change. On Audible, you are an anonymous listener. We don't know who you are, but when you buy from our shop, we can contact you directly and you can contact us. Don't worry, we'll protect your privacy and never sell, give, or rent your info. We don't want them to know who you are either. To buy our audiobooks, the link is in the shop and the notes.
Callie?
It came out more of a statement than a question, and she nodded her head without hesitation.
Callie has me. And Jack.
She said. Christian's stomach tumbled into his feet. He hadn't exactly felt joy at finding her still on this plane and not, say, in heaven, if there was such a thing, or reincarnated if that existed either. But now he realized that whatever hope he might have had with her still being present was squashed.
What is he doing to you and Mr. Harrow?
Joanna and Jack, Christian. You are far too old to be calling me Mrs. Harrow,
she said, and looked almost fond.
Oh, how I wished I could see you and Julian, as adults, as men.
Let me get Julian so you can see him.
Christian tried scratching around that wall again. He didn't dare leave her presence for fear she would disappear.
No, it will be agonizing to see him with things the way they are now, and I don't want him to know that I... Ah!
She put a hand up to her temple as if she was experiencing a sharp pain.
Joanna? What is it?
Christian took 2 steps forward. She held up her hand in a stop signal.
Don't come nearer!
He froze.
Why?
He might be able to reach you because you're a speaker to the dead,
she warned.
He knows that?
Christian felt uneasy, though he wasn't sure why. She nodded.
He knows everything. He can send us the spirits almost anywhere. He avoids Daemon, but you and Balthazar? He watches constantly.
Christian tightened his hold on the diamond. Had David been spying on him for Callie? He could well imagine the immortal offering to give David his body back, make him a vampire, and then grant him Christian as a prize for that service. Not that he thought Callie would honor such promises. Could he create a body for someone so long dead? He thought that Daemon had said no, but maybe he had misunderstood. Or maybe Callie had found a way around that limitation.
I see,
Christian said evenly.
You are special, Christian. The Callie can sense the undead near them, control their own, but they cannot hear the undead's thoughts. You can,
she said, and she must have experienced another spasm of pain. She curled forward. He wanted to go to her, to comfort her, but even if he could have gone to her, his hands would have simply moved through her.
She's risking punishment and pain to tell me these things. I must focus. Yes, I can hear some of the dead, but I don't... Oh.
Christian guessed.
Yes.
He heard from her mind.
You can find out things from us that he doesn't want you to know. We can speak without him hearing. You can hear me, can't you?
Yes, I can.
You are stronger and farther along in your gift than he thought possible.
She suddenly smiled proudly.
But I'm not surprised. Oh, my brilliant Christian. You were always ahead of the curve.
I think it has more to do with the fact that I'm Iros's fledgling, but...
You have always been extraordinary, Christian. Don't diminish anything you've done.
He nodded.
Callie definitely cannot hear us speak like this?
No, there is only one speaker to the dead.
She assured him.
But keep talking out loud. He'll guess what we're doing otherwise.
How does Callie have your and Jack's souls?
Christian asked.
Caemorn.
She answered simply and looked almost sad.
I don't understand. Oh, I'm a fool.
He hissed and bit his lip.
When Caemorn killed you, he kept your souls somewhere and Callie found them? Or did Caemorn give you to his master?
He thought he hid us well. But Caemorn is rather an open book to Callie.
She answered.
And because he spies on Caemorn too.
She added mentally.
What does Callie mean by sending you here?
He asked.
He wants Damon to know that if Damon attacks him, we will be the first to be destroyed.
She answered.
But that can't matter, Christian.
She told him mentally.
He must take Callie down. This creature must be stopped.
Julian would never survive that.
Christian told her.
He spent his life believing in and looking for vampires because he knew that your deaths were not the accident they were made to look like.
Her expression went utterly bleak for a moment.
Joanna, before he met Damon, you and Jack were the guiding focus of his life. He wanted nothing more than to vindicate your beliefs and expose the people who hurt you. Losing you forever would crush him.
Christian repeated.
Can you really destroy a soul, though, Christian? I don't think so. I think we would just move on, out of Callie's reach.
I don't think we should trust that.
We must speak aloud. He's worried.
Damon loves Julian, but he cannot allow Callie to remain outside of his rule.
Christian finally said.
He will never be able to truly kill Callie. He knows this. Why can't he just be satisfied with everything else but Callie's domain?
She asked.
Because he's king.
Christian found himself answering. It was what Damon said, and it made sense now.
And Callie has really pissed him off.
So his hate for Callie is greater than his love for Julian?
She tested.
In some ways, I hope it is. I hope he is strong enough to do what's right.
She said.
I'm not sure. He's modified his behavior for Julian before, and this will be... You and Jack are Julian's heart. It's not hate. It's a simple fact. He is king over all the vampires and immortals. That's a deal with him. And killing Callie for real versus taking everything from him, exposing him and dethroning him, may be things Damon has to do.
You cannot let cancer remain. It will metastasize.
Joanna agreed without hesitation.
You're so brave. You and Jack were so brave.
Christian found himself saying.
I never believed that there was another life after the first one. I hoped there was, but I truly believed there was nothingness. Yet, I still lived my life with all its glorious risks and did what was right even if it made things harder. Jack and I don't want that to change, especially not when our sons, you and Julian, will be negatively impacted if we do.
She told him.
You must explain to Julian her choice, Christian. We are not his victims. We are willing soldiers in this.
She said emphatically.
Julian won't care about that distinction. He'll want to save you. That's what he does. That's who he is. Joanna, your son is a hero. He'll never back down from this.
Christian told her. She closed her eyes, both proud and anguished by this faith.
I don't believe that Callie understands the relationship between a master and fledgling. I saw how he had treated Caemorn. His relationship with his own fledglings is flawed.
Christian told her.
What Julian and Damon have is beyond his ken.
He knows how romantic Damon is. That is a weakness in his view.
She answered. Christian knew that it could be a weakness, because it quelled the ruthlessness of the king.
It strengthens him,
Christian argued.
He came back for Julian. After millennia, after starving, he came back.
He loves my son?
She asked, the mother peeking through.
And is he worthy of love back? He's not like Callie, is he?
He loves Julian. The other immortals are not like Callie. Damon and Balthazar are wonderful. Don't worry.
Her expression became full of light for a moment.
And you and Balthazar are in love as well. I can see it on your face when you say his name.
Yes, I do care for him.
You love him. Oh, that's wonderful.
She didn't know what had happened between him and David. She had been trapped in a gem like David while all of that was happening. Christian suddenly felt sick at what he was doing to David. He would find a way to send the man on. He didn't want to keep him trapped like the Harrows had been trapped.
Callie should offer the two of you back to Julian and Damon.
Christian said. suddenly coming up with an idea.
He gives you up, he lets go of power, he takes whatever punishment is coming to him, and maybe then he gets to go on his merry way.
She smiled, clearly liking this.
I doubt that Callie would agree to such terms.
He may have no choice.
He is certain that Damon will not want to hurt Julian.
She responded.
But he must not allow Callie to continue on.
She said.
What is Callie planning?
He will reach out to those who are frightened or disaffected by Damon's return.
She explained.
There are those who will see Armageddon and know that this is their fate. A fate worse than death in their minds, because they have done things that they believe Damon will never forgive.
Christian thought of those mindless zombies heading to Seer. He considered the vampires turned humans. Yes, they were right. There would be for those for whom Armageddon was their destiny.
Damon has already told Julian that there will be decisions he must make that will be against Julian's wishes. But because he's king, he must make them.
Christian said.
That's still a win for Callie, because he believes that Julian will not forgive Damon.
She reminded him. Christian gritted his jaw. If only Joanna and Jack weren't in Carly's control. If only they were in heaven. But no, they were not. He knew when he told Julian about this that his best friend would probably lose his mind.
So, Callie wishes me to inform Damon of this?
Christian asked. She nodded.
Please try to convince Julian that it is a far worse hell for us to be with Callie than in the nothingness, Christian. And tell my son, will you do this?
She asked.
That we love him, and we are proud of him, and we will always be with him no matter what.
But that wasn't true. They had been in gems, not with Julian. They had been in Caemorn's shoebox of souls. They had been clearly tortured by Callie, so he could not tell Julian that last part.
I will, but I need you to tell Callie something,
Christian said, holding her gaze firmly as he wondered if Callie could see him.
He should give up now, because no matter what he has planned, Damon will win in the end.
She nodded.
I doubt that he'll let me out again,
she said.
But when others come, search for their minds. Communicate with them. None of us in his thrall are his friends or allies. We are his slaves.
I understand,
Christian told her, suddenly very happy he was a speaker to the dead.
Hold tight. We will save you. I promise you that.
She gave a faint smile and then disappeared. The wall of glass in his mind disappeared as well, and he heard Balthazar frantically calling for him. Christian mentally touched his master's mind, telling him he was fine, and to meet back at the spire. He started running back that way as well. He did not answer Balthazar's barrage of questions. There was a river of them. He had one thing he had to do first before he simply exploded. He exited the garden and saw Kmon still regarding his ruined throne sadly. Christian put a burst of speed into his steps and slammed an elbow up against Kmon's throat. He pinned the bigger, older vampire to the wall of the spire. Kmon should have been able to fight him off easily, because even though they were both the fledglings of immortals, Kmon was older. But Christian was so filled with rage that he wouldn't be stopped. Kmon's silver eyes were huge.
What is wrong with you?
Kmon gasped.
You fool. You insufferable fool. You kept Julian's parents?
Christian spat into his face.
And now Callie has them.
Join us next time for episode 77, A Path Forward.
We know Amazon and Audible are so easy. You can buy something with their one-click shopping and magic happens. But buying from our shop is also easy. Our audiobooks are regular downloadable files that you can save to any device anywhere, plain old MP3s. The good news is you actually have the files. Unlike with Audible and Amazon can disappear things from your library at any time for any reason. With us, it's a one-way push. Once you download the ebooks or audiobooks, you downloaded them for good. You're not streaming them from our site, which means we can't remotely zap them like Amazon can. And if you have any problems, you can just email us. You'll get us. Real live people who will help, not AI bots who don't care about you. Not a tech support call center with people paid by the hour to process you. We're a very small company and likely to keep it that way because that's what we want to do.
The Everdark podcast by Ex Aratare is performed by Edward Fox, Adam Riley, Jay Thillis, Bruno Devant, Kelly Michaels, and Hannah Hart, with Liz Gentle as Seer. Edited by Matthew Prince, continuity by Adrielle Wiggins. Everdark is produced by Wraith Rain Publishing in association with Her Grace Reed Studios. Copyright 2022 by Wraith Rain Publishing.